in the next 5 minutes, but in the interest of time, let's get the webinar going. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of Tulane University School of Professional Advancement and the Business and Leadership Studies program, along with our partner, SHRM, which is the student chapter for Society of Human Resource Management at Tulane, I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, Beyond Business as Usual, the AI Advantage Toolkit. I'm Ambika Prasad, Associate Program Director and Professor of Practice in the BSLS program. We are especially pleased to see such a diverse audience of students, professionals, and community members joining us. We have an excellent lineup of panelists today. We have Professor Robin Ice, who is the Senior Professor of Practice and Program Director of the BSLS program, Rick Coleman, President of SHRM New Orleans, Professor K. McLennan from the BSLS program, Javier Pineda, Tulane's Office of HR, Professor Knud Berthelsen, who will be joining us shortly. He's from the Connolly Alexander Institute for Data Sciences at Tulane, and Katina McGuinness, President of SHRM Student Chapter. Today's session centers on a clear reality that AI is actively reshaping how organizations function. So we look forward to a thoughtful and engaging session. Before we start, I want to remind you that we do have time for questions at the end. So we will start those around 7 p.m. Feel free to put in your questions at any time in the Q&A application, which you will see in the bottom of your Zoom screen. We aim to conclude promptly by 7:15 p.m. The session is being recorded today, and that recording will be shared with you in a couple of days' time. So let's get started. I first invite Professor Robin Ice for her opening comments.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Prasad. And I have little to say except to express gratitude to you for organizing this and to the panelists for taking the time to put together your presentations and to bring us this knowledge. These are indeed exciting times with the assistance of artificial intelligence in almost every area of our work lives and personal lives, really. So this is going to be great, and I'm excited to begin. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Professor Rice. And yes, you have been the inspiration behind this webinar. So thank you for those comments. Next, I invite Rick Coleman, President of Society for Human Resource Management's New Orleans Chapter.
All right. I don't think I have a whole lot to add. I just want to echo what Robin said. Just thank you so much for having us. I truly appreciate being able to represent the chapter in this capacity. I look forward to the learning that's going to take place this evening, and also hopefully I can provide a few insights. But largely, I just look forward to the conversation and what's to come, especially as we explore and get deeper into the strategic adoption of AI in the workforce.
Thanks, Rick. And the Society for Human Resource Management, in the last 3-4 years, I see that they have so much of programming on how our AI is being integrated into the human resource management function, which is exciting. All right, so let's get started. We first have Professor K. McLennan, and she would be talking about AI as a teaching and workplace personnel development tool.
Thank you, Professor Prasad. Let me share my screen, and I've got the sound enabled, so I think that everything will be okay. I'm going to talk about AI for teaching, training, and workplace personnel development. Let me get my... and the AI Toolkit lineup for this part of the presentation includes a demonstration of AI-enabled case study avatar characters, student feedback on the AI case study characters, the use of AI characters for interviewing, the use of AI characters for onboarding tours of a facility or factory, and the use of AI applications for the creation of training or teaching materials and other content. The first slide shows an early iteration of case study teaching materials. These materials featured 3D sets with mannequin avatar characters. Our Business and Leadership Studies program area uses case study scenarios from two companies, Moxie Togs and Feisty Feet, that Professor Ice created, and we use them across different courses. The business ethics case study on the screen was used instead of PowerPoint slides to pan around in during a class webinar session, with follow-up discussion prompts included on the course site discussion board as shown on the right-hand side of the screen. The second AI-related advance in 3D illustrations was the surprising and wonderful introduction of AI-enabled case study characters that students can question. Again, the different Moxie Togs and Feisty Feet case study scenarios are panned around in during webinar sessions, and questions with students able to question each of the different characters. To make the AI characters even more realistic, in addition to the ability of the characters to independently respond to questions, the responses provided can be shaped according to the big 5 personality traits that you'll see on the screen. Openness, the characters, you can use the sliders to set the different extroversion, agreeableness, sensitivity of your characters. Now we get to the all-important student feedback on these 3D illustrations and AI characters. With a sample size of about 100 students, 68%, or a solid majority of the Business and Leadership Studies students surveyed, found the use of 3D illustrations instead of PowerPoint slides to be more engaging. Still, about 24% of the students surveyed said the 3D illustrations were less engaging, and the main reason why they were less engaging had to do with information overload due to learning preferences or student learning disabilities. As a quick note, though, I found an easy way to accommodate the students that found the 3D illustrations to be too busy by simultaneously displaying a simplified set of PowerPoint slides for the students that want to opt out of viewing the 3D illustrations. Then when AI-enabled characters were added to the 3D sets, slightly more students found the illustrations to be more engaging, and interestingly, fewer students reported the illustrations to be information overload. Next, we'll take a look at how AI characters can be used for practice interviews or even to do the heavy lifting when it comes to preliminary interviews. In this example, the AI characters follow a script.
Hey there. I'm Alex, and I'll be your interviewer today for this mock software engineering interview. I'm really excited to help you practice and improve your interview skills. Why don't you start by telling me a bit about yourself? That's fantastic, Alice. 10 years of experience is impressive. I'd love to hear about some of the most challenging projects you've worked on or any particular areas of software development you're most passionate about. Would you mind sharing a bit more about that? Excellent choice of languages, Alice.
Boy, can you see? I had some issues. Is the character still up on the screen?
No, okay.
Nothing?
No.
Let me try sharing again. I don't know what happened. Is the character back?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. That was one of those glitches that my screen just went black. So sorry. Hopefully you got a chance to see Alex talking. And at the end, I'm going to put in a link to a document that has links to all of these video clips and other materials. So we can go on.
Before we dive into some technical questions,
Boy, he wants to keep talking. In this second example, just like the AI characters for interviewing, AI characters can be used for new employee onboarding tours of a facility or factory. In the second example, the narrative design utilizes location-based triggers, but it can also include conversations. So let's take a look at a little bit of this.
See narrative design in action as we approach a non-player character in this demo.
Hello. It's your first day in the office today, right? Are you ready for an on-ground tour of the facility?
Here, narrative design sets up an initial exchange with a location-based trigger that activates when we approach the tour guide NPC. Yes, I'm ready.
Okay then, follow me.
Narrative design triggers actions as well as conversations. Here, a walk-to action was invoked.
The conveyor belt is a crucial part of our operations here. It helps in the smooth transfer of goods from one point to another. Do you have any questions about it?
At this instance, the next objective was triggered. Here we can decide whether we want to ask the tour guide a question. Yeah, what does it transfer?
Okay, so that gives you an idea of these different applications. And again, all of the resources are going to be in the handout that I'll put in the chat. Turning now to the creation of materials, on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see how the Claude AI application can be used to create multi-tab tutorial materials, including knowledge tests. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see how the Gemini AI application turns uploaded files into a two-person narrated podcast. And let's take a listen to just a little bit of this.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that you specifically requested.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a deep dive into leadership, but
Nice.
forget those fluffy be a good person lists.
Yes,
You want to go deeper.
absolutely. We are going to dive into leading people within organizations.
Ooh.
It's a dense academic.
Again, you'll get links to all of these to check, to double check. As you can see, the creation of these types of engaging materials can enhance workplace trainings, even something like fire safety training, or announce initiatives like health insurance open enrollment periods.
text.
I bet.
And other materials can be created too. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see how some business and leadership studies graphics were created. I used ChatGPT. I uploaded our color scheme, and then ChatGPT took it from there and gave us 9 alternative logos. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see how Gemini turned the headshots of business and leadership studies faculty from our SoPA website into cool action figures. But interestingly, Gemini is clearly not all-knowing, since it put my action figure into a skirt when I rarely wear a skirt. So a dead giveaway. In closing, given the examples of AI characters, I want to mention a couple considerations that using these characters, it's always important to be aware of privacy issues concerning, in my case, student data, but employee data. AI can yield biased or erroneous information, something to keep in mind. And I just, in the same way that I've encountered students that have some aversion to AI use, my guess is that there's some aversion in the workplace too to overcome. And in terms of the early findings from surveys of users, it's recommended not to attempt to use chatbots to create real people. Apparently, this really turns people off. So that's an important safety tip. In terms of what's next, there's more what you see is what you get applications on the horizon. What I'm looking forward to is more ability to deploy multiple chatbots, have chatbots talk to each other even about case studies. We'll be expanding our knowledge of what constitutes best practices. And then this is kind of a negative. Unfortunately, free AI applications are becoming more and more limited. So unfortunately, we have to acquire more expensive paid subscriptions. Thank you for watching, and I'll turn it back over to Professor Prasad.
Thanks a lot, Kay. That was informative and entertaining. And also for our participants, any questions for Kay, feel free to put it in the Q&A and we'll get to them at the end. Our third speaker, Knud, just messaged he'll be joining us at 6:30, but before that, we have Javier from Tulane's Office of HR, and he'll be talking about AI as a performance coach, vibe coding, and real-time feedback.
Thank you, Professor Prasad. It is my pleasure and it's an honor to be here with you all to be able to share a little bit about what Tulane is doing as a whole, at least in the corporate side, our Office of Human Resources is doing to help bridge the gap for people, for employees who are starting their work journeys here at Tulane, but also how to improve, how to grow and develop. I love a lot of the things that Professor McLennan shared because it's really relevant to what we want folks to do with AI to help develop themselves. So I'm going to share my slides in a minute. And what I want to show you first is the idea that we can all learn and grow. Now, what we do at Tulane HR mostly is 4 different things. It is, number 1, learning and development for employees. Number 2, goals and performance for employees. Number 3, orientation, so onboarding or orienting new employees to Tulane. And then number 4, it is to assist them with the recognition. So getting people to recognize each other and provide feedback. That is one of the things we do at Tulane HR. So I'm trying to get my screen to share. Give me a minute. See if I can share that. I think y'all are seeing the back end of things. I'm going to switch it over to full screen in a second. Or actually, I can just do this. Pivot here. So in my first slide, what I wanted to show is right here is the idea that we're going to start off by looking at Gemini as a goal simulator. Why is this important? Well, to be honest with you, the world of work has changed so much, and it continues to change with AI. But even before AI was here, we would still have folks who would come to work and they say, well, I signed up for this job description. This is what I'm supposed to do day in and day out. They start off their work and a few months later, and now they're starting to do different tasks, maybe because they've become more proficient in the work they do, or maybe because they've outgrown the job. Whatever the case is, their job has changed. And at the end of the year, you're using the traditional human resource function of annual performance reviews. They would go and sit down with those employees and talk about what their job description said at the very beginning. Well, at the moment they started doing new tasks, that's all gone away. It really does not matter what they were doing when they signed up for the job. That role has changed. So how do you mitigate that? Because really that's really incentivizes employees from continuing to grow because they have to kind of go back to their job description. If a job description needs to change, it has to go through a process. We're talking to compensation, and that needs to be changed all in the back end. So what is the best way to approach this? And that's actually by creating goals from your job description. You see, goals are these things that we as human beings, we do all the time. Every now and then you want to go to visit your sibling or family member over the weekend. That's a goal. What I'm going to choose to have for dinner today. That's a goal. We work by goals. Why don't we then work in our office space through goals? And that still boggles me that we haven't really figured out a way to actually apply goal and goal sharing within Tulane as a whole. We've had pockets and different departments do the same. So what we've been doing in the last year is preparing Tulane for a big change that's already happened with our new WaveWorks initiative, which allows different tools to become available, including goals and setting up goals and check-ins throughout the year. So all this preamble was to say that what I want to show you now is how you can also use AI to assist in this process of creating goals. And there's not just any goal, but actually SMART goals, which are specific and measurable and actionable or achievable and time-bound and realistic goals, so that you can actually make sure that your goal is actually something you can accomplish, as opposed to just, I would like to one day become the president of the company. That's one day, very lofty. So we want to make sure you have goals that you can actually make that are applicable. So I'm going to switch over to a demo that we can showcase, and you can actually try this at home. I'm going to start off with Gemini for this exercise. So Gemini is a Google AI. It's free. You can upgrade to the Plus subscription like I just did, because I want to try out some new tools, but it's totally free. You can do this at home. But this is as simple as asking Gemini these words right here: generate an app that I can use to turn job descriptions and tasks into SMART goals. Okay, the word choice is very important. This is what we folks who are going into AI more and more calling prompt engineering. I could ask it to, hey, turn my job description into SMART goals, and it'll give me a list. But I'm using the words generate an app that I can use for this process. Now, the words generate an app, if you think about it, usually an app on your phone, it requires some type of coding. Well, the coding that Gemini is about to do is actually called vibe coding. And vibe coding is this term that now being used to explain how we can, as users of AI, don't have to learn how to code. We can have AI code for us. So that's the term vibe coding. So to get this to vibe code, we have to turn on one little feature that it's got. Right here under tools, you have a couple of different options for Gemini. Now, I've tried different AIs, but Gemini seems to be the best at doing this process for me. You can have create an image, canvas, all these different options. I'm going to choose canvas. This enables the coding to appear on the side. I'm telling it again, generate an app that I can use to turn job descriptions and tasks into SMART goals. All right, so I'm going to click submit here, and it's going to start working through this. So as it says on the left, I'll create SMART goal architecture for you. This will help you transform messy job descriptions and tasks into structured, high impact goals using SMART framework. On the right, you have it vibe coding for me. So why are we telling employees to do this? Well, you see, sometimes going through SMART goals and trying to figure out what S and M, A are, it takes some time. And time is one of those things that AI has seemed to really help out with, especially with content that we are unfamiliar with. I told it to look up SMART goals, right? I don't have to memorize the word SMART, what it stands for, the acronym. I can actually have it generate this information for me. As you see on the right-hand side, now I've got the ability to upload maybe some context here, some job description. I present performance management. I do performance management presentations. Okay, every quarter. Okay, that is a context or job description, or I can actually put this in task or goal idea. Here's the funny thing about this. I didn't tell it to specifically make an app that everyone's going to look very different. I basically just told it to, you decide exactly how this is going to look, and I will then take that upon myself to make the most of it. And so now it's thinking through the SMART goal framework, and it's taken what I've given it, the task of, I personally do performance management presentations every quarter, and it's going to try to make a SMART goal from it. While it's thinking through this, we want to equip employees with the ability to go and practice, put this to practice. This is not the end all be all of the goal. Actually, this is a conversation starter. You have to look at the human AI human side of all of this. You have to look at yourself in this position saying, do I agree with this? This is my idea. The AI is going to talk to you and say, I prefer this, doing it this way. So then you, at the end, the last output has got to be the human aspect of you putting this to practice, which is what we, well, it's actually taken a lot longer than anticipated. And AI can do this. It can hallucinate as well, but it should be just creating a goal for me here. But like I was saying, the idea here is for it to be a way for you to have that conversation with your leaders so that you can go forth and actually put these goals to practice, right? If it says, oh, you should probably generate 5 different presentations, then you know that it's 5 is not a quarter. So then you tweak it and you say, okay, these are the 4 presentations I'm going to do this year. And that's what you present to your leader. So it looks like it's having some issues, which is fine because I have some other things that's generated in the past. And this is so funny because every time I try this and when I practice, it works out. But every now and then it actually doesn't. So let's see if it does this one. This is the one we tried. Okay, that was refreshing. All right, so let me try this one more time. January SMART goal. Okay, you want me to enter this as well? Okay, so it's sticking through this. All right. The other thing you can do while this is, oh, here it goes, is now that it's provided you some specific insight here, this actually tells you what the SMART goal is. You can always go back on the left-hand side and say, help me turn the task into a SMART goal, not explain what a SMART goal is. And so what it will then do is go back and change the code because obviously it didn't quite understand what I was saying. And that's part of the intent, right? So I will update the SMART goal architecture for you. So like I said, I've used this with Gemini and it works pretty well. Although right now it wishes to do something else otherwise. We also have used Copilot to just break down the goals into the SMART goal architect framework. And that way people have kind of a written list as opposed to just it kind of telling you what to do. It's actually showing you how you can do it. So on the right hand side, it basically gives you the output. You check it. Is this what I want? No, this is not what I want. Let's retweak it. And that's how you vibe code. You don't have to code. You actually can take a moment to breathe while you're working through this. So I'm gonna switch over now to our presentation because what other thing we do at Tulane Human Resources is actually talk through feedback, and getting feedback to and from employees is very important. So we try to equip our leaders with the ability of how to provide feedback to their employees, especially on performance cycles or whether it's to grow. And one of the tools that we use is LinkedIn Learning. If you're an employee at Tulane, you have this for free. If you are a faculty or staff or student, you have this for free available to you. You'll be able to go and just look up Tulane LinkedIn Learning and it should get you there. So once you activate your account, you're able to do so many different things. One of the important things that it's enabled us to do now is the AI-powered coaching. So it says right here, AI coaching and role play. It's very similar to what we saw with what Professor McLennan was showing, where you can have an interview and it can give you feedback. So let me switch back over to the screen to just demo this briefly. And then you can activate your account and try this on your own at any time. So Learning Career Hub is what it's going to look like when you log in. On the left-hand side, you got the home, career paths. These are the basic layout for LinkedIn Learning. But under here, we have practice, AI role play. And this is where you have this practice everyday work. So you wanted to, let's say I'm the employee. I want to practice receiving feedback from my boss because I'm feeling nervous about my performance evaluation. I need to know how to then respond to something that they're saying. So I want to practice receiving feedback from my boss. Okay, you can give it, you're creating this persona. You can say they are very reserved themselves. So I want to make sure I make it through the conversation, right? So it's one of those things, you're creating the persona when you are putting in this prompt. Again, it's prompt engineering. You wanna give it a good prompt so you can create a good persona. And that way you can put yourself as the leader giving someone else feedback, or you can put yourself as the employee, like I did here. On the bottom hand side, it says employee here. It says my AI is going to be the LinkedIn manager. Here's the fun part though. What I'm going to do is I'll press start. You should be able to hear what the AI is going to say, and I should be able to respond back to what the AI is saying. If I turn up my volume, it should allow us to hear. Hi, it's been a while. It's been a while since I did my performance evaluation. I'm very curious to know what you have to say about my performance this past quarter. Oh, looks like we're having an issue with the sound. Now it's supposed to be, as you can see, it's saying something because it's got the subtitles here. But technology sometimes can trick us, and the Zoom's not allowing me to share the sound. But I can basically, what questions do you have about that so far? Well, I wanted to let you know that I know I was late on some of my tasks, but I really want to know, how do you feel about me working out a plan with my coworker to improve that? So as you can see, this actually is a great tool if you can get the sound to work to actually improve upon your receiving and giving feedback. So I'm going to end the session. The other fun thing about this is that it's going to analyze this whole conversation with the AI, and it's going to give you feedback tips on how to improve. So you can see there's strengths, nice work acknowledgement responsibility, good initiative. Now areas of improvement, clarify with questions, paraphrase and set expectations. So here is the transcript itself. It gives you that information so you can go in and maybe improve upon receiving and giving feedback. So we do this at Tulane HR. We do sessions with leaders on this. We've done it with Copilot as well, where you can actually have it do the voice to text thing, and it can speak back to you. So it's really interesting how we can use AI to really help us grow and develop in our workspace, as long as we're willing to work with it, right? Give it the right prompts and be able to be open to the changes that are coming alongside it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Javier. And yes, we will be sharing these tools with the details of these tools with the participants. Next, I invite Knud, who will be talking on, well, what happened in AI and what's new.
Thank you very much. You should now be able to see my screen. Is that someone can confirm that?
Yes, we can.
Very good. You can ignore the QR code in the corner. This is the core of a longer workshop that I've been doing on AI called What's New and What's Next. Right. We're today here talking about what's new, and what I'd like to do is sort of give a brief recent history of the developments in AI since the introduction of ChatGPT, leading up to what are the current strongest tools, and what are my recommendations on those. Let's see here. So beginning in 2022, of course, and on the last day of November, we had the start of the whole thing, and it was the launch of ChatGPT. So I'm not saying there was no such thing as AI before, but that's when this whole thing started. It was the first time all of us, suddenly had access to a tool that we were all able to access, and we were all able to use it because all it took was chat. Like if you could write a message, you could talk to or write with ChatGPT, right? And that came out there at the very end of 2022 and launched this whole sort of AI, whatever you want to call it, that has happened since. I want to point out one thing about this one, which is we're going to follow a little bit along by talking about something called tokens and a context window. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on what that is before. For practical reasons, you can just think of tokens as short words or word parts, right? So 8,000 tokens, you can just think of it as 8,000 words. It's the easiest way to do it. And the context window is the operating memory of the AI tool, right? So while they're trained on enormous amounts of data and information, all that, so it limits to how much they can sort of keep in their heads during one conversation with you, for example, right? And the initial one had about 8,000 tokens of context window, which if you were there and you remember using this, it meant that you could do 6, 7, maybe 8 pages of stuff in there before it suddenly got very confused. Because what happened was it no longer knew what had began the conversation and didn't have the context anymore for what was happening. So errors would be introduced based on that. So when ChatGPT was launched, for those of us who had played around with sort of lesser tools before, it was pretty amazing. I was absolutely shocked that we were able to do some of these things. And of course, today, it would be terrible. Like I think there's an AI that runs on my watch that is now better than the original ChatGPT, right? So let's move into 2023. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm not going to go into detail on all of these. So I sort of highlighted some that I think are more important than others. But the big one first is in March, GPT-4 was launched by OpenAI. They actually already had this internally when they released ChatGPT. They were surprised how popular ChatGPT was because they knew how bad it was compared to GPT-4, right? This was the first multimodal AI, meaning that the one before could only deal with text in and text out. This one could see images. For example, you could give it a drawing. You could sort of draft one of the. Remember this from the preview. They put on a little napkin, like I want to make a website that looks roughly like this, and took a picture and gave it to it, and it returned an HTML file of a website that looked sort of like that, right? And you can also see it doubled the size of the context window to 16,000 tokens, right? In July of that year, still OpenAI being in the leads, they released something called Code Interpreter. This was the first ability for an AI tool to actually write and run code. So no longer could you only sort of ask it to remember things, but when it came to, for example, data analysis and all that, if you gave it some data and you wanted to do something like that, it would then sort of create an environment and it would write and run Python code to analyze data, for example. All of the tools do that now, but for quite a long time, this was the only tool that did that. Same month saw the release of Claude 2 by Anthropic. Anthropic is a company of people who left OpenAI to sort of go their own way. And it was absolutely a huge thing when this happened because suddenly there was 100,000 tokens, right? So we went from 8 to 16 and straight to 100,000, and quite soon after that, a few months later, up to 200,000. So let's take a quick stop here and look at the bottom of the screen. I sort of added just to make it a little bit easier to conceptualize some of these. So 100,000 tokens is about 75,000 words. And it's like a normal, relatively short book. It's like The Catcher in the Rye or the first Harry Potter book, right? But this was a big step up, and you could now. I still remember one of the first things that sort of was done to demonstrate this was they put in The Great Gatsby, and they had rewritten it to give someone an iPhone, I think it was, and they asked, "Is there anything in here that's wrong?" And less than 2 seconds later, it says, "Well, there's an iPhone here on page so and so," and that's obviously not. Correct, right? So, big leap forward in July with the introduction of Claude 2, right? Moving on, we're now into 2024, and it started with Google having, so Google originally more or less invented AI. Like there's a seminal paper called Attention is All You Need. It was written by Google engineers in 2017, and then they sort of dropped the ball on this whole thing, and Anthropic, OpenAI came in and ran with it, and it took Google a while to sort of catch up. They have very much caught up at this point, but Gemini 1.5 released there suddenly took us from 100 or 200,000 tokens, and ChatGPT still back there at 16,000 to 1 million tokens, right? And actually, briefly there had a 2 million one that didn't work very well, wasn't accurate enough, so they took that away. But 1 million tokens, and we've had that ever since with the Gemini models. And that then, if you look at the bottom again, now it's not just like a little book, it's the King James Bible or Atlas Shrugged or all of the Tolkien books could sort of fit into the context window so that you can work with that. That is like what you can work with. That is your information that you give to it. It's information that it gives to you, all this combined. Right? Next, we are in March, and Claude 3 was released. And this was the first time when a new model came out, and it was clearly better than the best one before, which was GPT-4. Right, so it was a new model, and it sort of showed for the first time that this whole AI thing was not some secret sauce OpenAI had only. There were others as well that knew how to do that. OpenAI released GPT 4.0. which was truly multimodal. Like it actually could deal with voice in and out, images in and out, all these things. And it was quite popular with a lot of people. It was never as good as this Claude 1, and also briefly after that, just a month later, they released Claude 3.5, which was even better. And this was also the first time we saw something that they call artifacts, and the other tools now call it a canvas. And this is when, instead of just having a chat, right, like a message back and forth, you now can have that on one side of the screen, and on the other side of the screen, you have a document, right, a canvas or an artifact in which you collaborate with your AI tool to write things there, which could be code, or it could be just texts, like as in a word processing, or it could be data, it could be different things, right? And that was introduced back then in June of 2024. A little bit later in the year, in September, was a significant breakthrough, and this came first by OpenAI. And like almost all of these things, like once it comes out from one of these companies, it doesn't really take that long before the other AI labs also have the same thing. And this was the reasoning model, the first reasoning or thinking model. So if you have used, at least if you used one of the paying or the paid tools for AI, which I very much recommend that you do over the ones that are free, you might have seen this. You ask a question or give the task, whatever it is, and then instead of answering right away, you can see that it says, oh, I'm thinking about this. And if you click on it, you can expand it. It will see what it does, and it reasons about what the user is actually asking, what this means, what it needs to do. For example, if you ask about the most recent Saints game, it will say things like, oh, this must have happened after my knowledge cutoff. I must go online and find information about this before I can start answering. The best way to do this, and then it goes into it. And this was a significant jump in capability for all the AI models that came after that as well. More things happening here, but I'm going to skip a little bit to the end here for December, when Gemini 2.0 was released by Google, included a couple of different things, but it was the first one to have it was called a deep research mode, which is when instead of you just having a conversation back and forth, you basically commission a report on something. You say, go out and research this topic for me. And then it will take 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes and go out. It creates a plan for how to research this. It starts reading a very high number of sites and pages and articles, 700, 800, 900 I've seen. And then at the end, it compiles this into a neat little report that it gives to you and says, I'm done. It's been 15 minutes, so and so many sources. Here's the resource. So that was the first one from Google. Now, again, all of the different sort of main companies have versions of this at this point. Okay. We're moving into 2025, so we're catching up. We're getting there, and there's just so much happening here, right? So let's just sort of pull out the most important ones of these. But obviously, feel free to ask questions about the others at the end if we have time as well. But in February here, Claude Code, you might have heard of this lately, was released. This was, and now all of the others have this as well. This was the first, by one of the AI labs themselves, at least, terminal agentic coding tool, right? So what this is really is a tool for software developers, for people who actually know what to write in the command line of a computer and to write code and do these things. And it became a tool that, to begin with, professional developers would say stuff like, oh, this is great. I can use this for some of the review. I could do 10%, maybe 20% of what I normally would do. I can now have this do, and I can focus on the other 80. And since this, what's happened over time is that thing has completely changed till, in the last quarter of last year, it would be 80-20 instead of 20-80. And this year it has gotten to 100%. So most of the sort of programmers that I follow are now claiming that 100% of their code that they deliver is written by AI. A little bit later in the year, we get to May. Claude released, or Anthropic released Claude 4, which was very much the new number one. The reason why I have question marks about new number one for the others was that in December of 2024, there were some releases by OpenAI of some new models that were probably the best, but they were not available to most people. Like if you have to pay $200 a month and it only works for like, half hour per day, I just don't really count them compared to some of the other things. It's almost more like an internal tool for that. So that's in May, and we now move into July, and we're moving into a different way of using AI, which is the agentic browser. So Perplexity Comet is a browser that is very much like Google Chrome. I think 99 point something percent of its code is Google Chrome or something Chromium, but it has a layer on top of it, which is that instead of just you having an AI that you can exchange messages with and it can give you information and it can sort of interpret your information, it can take action for you. So it can go to different websites for you. It can click buttons. It can write into fields instead of just reading for you. So this was the first one. Again, all of these now have a version of an agentic browser, all the big four at least. This one I have to say though is still the best. I use it. It is incredible for like small, basic, boring tasks, which include like a lot of copying from here to there and going to find this and all that, and more to being sort of merged into the greater sort of AI agency tools so that they can go out and do things for me. Okay. So this is part 1 of 2025, and we get to part 2, and more things keep rolling out. It was a busy fall. Briefly mentioned that everyone was very excited and had waited for a long time for GPT-5 to come out. It was supposed to be, the big new thing, and it was widely considered not to be that. But let's not spend too much time on that, only saying it wasn't that great. And right after that came Claude Sonnet 4.5, which was a significant step up and a very clear new #1 and sort of smartest, most useful model. In November, it's Google that we're highlighting here first. Their new Gemini 3 Pro was slightly better, I think, than Sonnet 4.5, so they got the lead there a little bit. They also released something called, stupidly, Nano Banana Pro that, despite the silly name, is actually a very serious tool. And what it is, it's an image creation and editing model. So with Nano Banana Pro, you could not just create all these images that you have been able to do for a long time with different tools, but if there's something in there you say, oh, not quite like that, then it can edit it for you as well. So just sort of quick example, I used it to make this one here, and I first forgot that I was supposed to have a QR code, and I said, oh, add in the same style, add a little box that I can drag a QR code into, and then it did that, right? So he was able to follow these instructions, this is for another thing that's the whole theme of all those slides are ancient mosaics, but with AI, right? So this becomes a much more useful tool. And Notebook LM is the research assistant tool from Google, and it has this baked into it. So now more and more of my students, being probably the most AI savvy students on campus at least, they now quite often, and I do this myself, make slides using Notebook LM. Go in there, give it the information, and just click a button that says, make slides. And you get beautiful slides. And then if there's something you don't like, one of them, you just type right under that slide, change this to this, and then it will do that. So the ability to use AI to make and edit slides is something people have been asking for almost since the first day of ChatGPT. And I think it's pretty incredible that Microsoft with PowerPoint has sort of failed. It failed in so many ways, but this is another one you'd like really think they would be able to do that. And instead it is Google that comes out with this tool, and quite others. Claude now has an add-on that goes inside of your PowerPoint and just does your PowerPointing for you, and it does it beautifully as well, right? So same month, November here, we also had a new Anthropic model called Claude Opus 4.5, which was better, again, than Gemini 3 Pro. And this introduced the concept of compacting conversations. So again, going back to the whole context window thing, right? So what used to happen before the compacting thing is that I would be working with Claude, and then at some point it would just say, oh, the context window is now full, you have to start a new chat. What the compacting does is that right before that happens, it goes through the entire conversation, it summarizes it, it writes a memo to its future self, and then it resets so that it has nothing in the context window, and then it reads the file that says, welcome back, here's what you need to know, and then it can keep going that way, right? Briefly mentioned at the bottom there too, Notebook LMs, we haven't really talked that much about it. It is an insane tool where you can put up to 300 documents into it, and each document can be up to 50,000 words, which is a whole lot, and actually it is as much as it says right down there. It's the entire Encyclopedia Britannica 3.5 times you can put into a tool that can then tell you everything about everything that is in there. It's wild when you do it with content like articles you download and stuff like that, but it's even wilder when it's your own stuff. So I do this. I have a Zoom recording of the audio of every class meeting that I have, and I put it in there, and now I and my students can go back and figure out exactly what was said about anything at any point, which is a very useful tool for us. And finally, then, we are in 2026, and it's been a year already in many ways. In January, the first thing that happened here was that Anthropic released something called Claude Cowork, which is basically Claude Code for non-coders. So at this point, I've sort of taught myself a few things. I can use Claude Code. I used it yesterday to create an entirely new website for myself by giving it the old one that's on a different system and say this, but better, and on this system. And it did that, right? But Claude Cowork is more like a sort of a knowledge worker in the sense that you can give it access to folders on your computer and say, for instance, my next project, I just got into this now, is like, here's my download folder. It is a mess. Organize it. Put everything into subfolders that make sense so that I actually know where to look for things, and it can do things like that. In February, first thing to mention was another new Claude that was a new #1. And at this point, Claude got up to 1 million tokens, right? So if you remember, Gemini already had 1 million tokens. They've had that for a while. Claude now has 1 million tokens. And it also included that new PowerPoint add-on that I mentioned, and another one for Excel. So now, instead of sort of taking your PowerPoint files and your Excel spreadsheets to the AI, you can just be in those pieces of software that you already know and just click a little button, and now you have Claude in here, and you can talk with it about your data and have it do things for you and create slides and create tables and whatever it is that you want. It is very, very useful for that. Next one that we want to mention after that is Perplexity Computer, which is my new favorite tool. It is basically a digital worker. Unlike these other things, it doesn't need access to your computer because it is its own computer. It's like a Linux environment in the cloud or something like that. So you get set up with Perplexity Computer, and what they say, and so far I haven't been able to stump it, is that anything that a good knowledge worker can do on their computer, it can do for you. So that's one of the newer ones. That's certainly where I'm spending a lot of time these days, having it do a very wide variety of tasks. And then finally, ChatGPT came back, which was wonderful because for quite a long time, they have not had the best model, and they have generally been behind on so many things. But their latest model, ChatGPT 5.4, specifically the thinking version of that, is an incredibly good model. It might be the best. It's certainly up there at the same level, I'd say, as Claude 4.6. And they did now suddenly and finally also go up to 1 million tokens, so that all of the 3 main tools now can deal with the same amount of information. So you no longer have to sort of pick tool based on one being able to deal with more than the other. And they also released an add-in there to Excel that, from all my testing so far and from what I'm seeing from others, is absolutely on par with Claude's. Some people actually prefer it because it shows its work better. It uses the formulas in Excel instead of going out and fixing things outside and just showing you the answer. It shows its work. So yeah, I think these things are good. And that leads to this, because this is sort of the typical questions that I get. First of all, you absolutely should spend money on using tools if you're going to be serious. There's a whole lot of interest and discussions about who should actually pay for it. For example, Tulane should pay for it, but that's sort of besides the point. My main argument is the paid versions of the tools are so much better than the free ones. And if you do not get $20 a month of value out of having a superior tool like that, it's not the tool that's the problem. Then it's you that needs to think about how you're working with these things. For the longest time, I used to say that ChatGPT was probably the best all-rounder for people. It's no longer the case. At this point, Claude is the clear number one. So if you're going to spend only $20 a month, they all cost $20. Claude is the one. It gives you normal Claude, it gives you Claude Code and Claude Co-work, and it gives you Claude in spreadsheets and Claude and PowerPoint and all these things. It's a very good and serious tool. If you're willing to add a little bit to that, the next thing I would do is Google's Gemini. Mostly because of Notebook LM, because you get extra features and numbers of sources and what you can do in Notebook LM, which I think is one of the most interesting tools out there at this point. And also, if you are generally a Google user, you will then get Gemini integrated in all of your other Google tools. Like I now have Gemini in my Chrome, in my Gmail, in my Google Docs, in my Google Sheets, etc., and it's sort of useful for that. Then after that, it sort of depends a little bit on what it is that you're using for. So Perplexity is the best if what your main thing is search, for example. It is very good at that. That's what it was sort of created originally as. It is a search engine powered by AI. And it comes with access to all the other AIs up to, so when I use Perplexity, I use both Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT in Perplexity. So it's sort of like package solution for that. It also comes with by far the best agentic browser, which is Comet by Perplexity. It is just much better than the agentic browsers from any of the others. It just works, right? You tell it to do something and it does that. A lot of the others, you tell it to do something, it gets confused, and then it does something that's almost good, and that's just not good enough, right? But if you do have some sort of affinity for ChatGPT and you've used it a lot and you have a lot of stuff in there, that might also be the way to go, because it is a very, very good model, and they have become much more generous when it comes to use limits. You can just hammer at it for hours and hours without it saying, "Oh no, you have to wait 4 hours" or something like that. Now it's gotten good at that. So depending on what your interests are, those are my recommendations. I'm going to stop sharing and see how we're doing.
Yeah, perfect. Yes. Thanks a lot, Knud. What a journey, and all this in only, 3 years? So yeah, thanks a lot. So as we come to the last 15 minutes of our webinar, I want to thank the speakers for the discussion. And I just want to take a few minutes to reiterate the importance of ethics as we begin to integrate AI into the workplace, and then we'll get into the questions. I feel that at its best, AI allows us to make more informed and timely decisions, but that promise is only realized when human judgment remains central. So there are a couple of areas of emphasis. First is the issue of bias in decision-making. The World Economic Forum recently said that approximately 88% of the companies are using AI in candidate screening. Now, AI systems learn from historical data, and that data often reflects past inequities. For example, if an AI tool is used to screen resumes trained on prior hiring patterns, it may systematically disadvantage certain groups, as was seen in a recent lawsuit in California, Mobley versus Workday. Ethical use requires active auditing, questioning outputs, testing for adverse impact. The second matter is of transparency and explainability. Employees and candidates should understand how decisions are being made. If AI is used in performance evaluations or promotion recommendations, for instance, organizations must be able to explain the rationale behind those outputs. a black box approach can erode trust. So in short, the fundamental principles of effective organizational management remain unchanged as we integrate various AI tools in organizational management. Next, let's move on to the questions. We have a few open questions and also space for general comments from the panelists. So I'm opening up the questions. I see that 4 questions have already been answered by our panelists. Thank you. We have a few open ones. The first one, I think, is a continuation of a previous conversation, which had been addressed by Kay and Robin. I'm coming to the question by Zena Harris. She says that I'm interested in the PowerPoint feature to produce better presentations. Please summarize the process and AI tool. I think it was Knud who talked about it.
Yes, I can do that. So this is a tool by Claude. It's a Claude tool. The company behind it is Anthropic. And it is currently available for any paying subscriber. That's the $20 a month version of Claude. And once you have an account, all you do is you go into add-ons in PowerPoint, which is you may not have used before, but if you've done add-ons in Excel or something else, it's somewhere up on the right side in the menu. I can't remember exactly. And then you find it there. You can also find it from, I think it is claude.com/downloads, or you can just ask Claude where to find it. But yes, it will be an add-on, and then there's a bit of a process just to install it the first time. You have to log in and do these things. And you may or may not get some grief from Tulane IT. I've had, like, at first just the button didn't exist. And then I said, okay, I will just do it into PowerPoint for browser. And I did that. And then it also appeared in the main PowerPoint. But I have used it both on my computer and on like a classroom computer. So I do know that it works. And once it's in there, you can just, let's say you have an existing set of slides, you can just discuss that. You can say, hey, I like the content of these slides, but I don't like the design. Can you make them Tulane green and, do these things? And it will do that, right? Or you can also say, here's a bunch of text. Here's my outline for this presentation. Can you make the slides for me? And then you can go in and discuss individual slides. Say, oh, slide number 3, I'm not entirely into that. Can you change it to this, etc.
Thank you. We have a question from Lawrence. Google was sued for manipulating searches. Is there any concern that AI may manipulate for reasons advantageous to the company?
I can address that one too, because that's a really good question as well. Somewhat surprisingly, it seems no. Like I've tested all of these, and they're happy to recommend products from the other companies. So it's not always so that Google recommends that you use Google Sheets over Excel, for example, or anything like that. So I would say I feel good about Google. I feel good about Anthropic, so Claude. I worry a little bit about ChatGPT and OpenAI, especially since they recently started advertising. So if you have free ChatGPT now, they will serve ads. They can serve ads, and they claim that does not sort of interfere with anything. But I don't really know about that. At the end of like getting a result about something, it says, "Oh, now that we know you're interested in that, maybe you also want this." I'm not really sort of good on that. Famously, Elon Musk with his Grok AI had issues because he kept trying to not admit that like the largest nuisance on the internet was Donald Trump and Elon Musk, for example, and it wouldn't do it, right? And then there was some heavy-handed over sort of adjustments that it was just very obvious, right? So I think, you could, depending on where you stand politically, that sort of tells you whether or not you want to use Grok. Like there are some that very much only will use Grok because they don't believe in anything else, and others who are like, yeah, maybe I should use Grok now and then to see a different perspective. But at the end of the day, the finding, and this is not just by me, but the finding is that all of these models are relatively close to each other in a worldview, if you will, which mostly sort of like a classically liberal Western values. There's a whole story about China there too, but that's for a different day.
Thank you. Wasn't there a lawsuit in Europe recently involving Grok? But I don't know if it's settled yet. Thank you, Knud. Any other comments from our panelists? And please, any more questions, please put in there.
I think it's interesting talking about just these big four companies and how they've gotten working contracts with the government. And we have a lot of interesting things to keep up with when it comes to that, because Anthropic is coming under some heat because it won't allow the US government to just give them the tool in itself. And so there have been some speculation as to what they could do to prevent it from continuing to grow. It's an interesting conversation. It's interesting to read and listen into the news to see how you can keep up to date with all these things are changing, because the way that there's a contract, I think it was a ChatGPT has got a contract with the Pentagon, I believe. It's how they can help these tools grow or market themselves or not. So that's an interesting piece. I think it's continuing to evolve, and just keep an eye out for that, because I was reading about, I think it was in The Economist, there was a piece on how the US government might, how would they want to punish Anthropic for not giving them the tool? And it's by keeping it from being able to partner with any type of government relation. And so that means that it would hit a lot of different forks on the road or walls, because there's so many different companies that work with the government. So it's very interesting just to look at how that all is impacting. But Anthropic's holding firm. Anthropic's saying we're just not going to hand over a tool with, who knows what the end result's going to be. We want to make sure we can help out until there's some kind of rules of the game of how to use AI in the world, whether it's military or otherwise. So that's an interesting topic to follow up if you're interested as well. Oh, one last thing before I did share with everyone on the chat. I believe it's Professor McLennan's link, and also the two videos that I have previously recorded with SMART Goals and LinkedIn Learning, so you can go and try those out on your own. You will need Tulane box, but if afterwards we can share this with the general public, we'll do so as well.
Thanks, Javier, because we do have members from the general public joining us today as well. And all these resources, we hope to be able to send them in a day or two when we send out the recording to the participants. Rick, I saw that you had raised your hand.
Yeah, sure. So just very briefly, and just kind of to echo on what you said, Professor Prasad, and also what Javier mentioned, just making sure, and from a SHRM perspective, that we always try to keep the human intelligence aspect in the AI, right? Some of the issues that we saw, like mentioning with Anthropic, was, well, some of the safeguards wanted to be removed. Some of the safeguards that encourage human intervention, human interaction. So no matter what we do with these technologies, I think we should, especially from a SHRM perspective, always prioritize strategic AI adoption over just any reactive implementation as well in these business practices. And as much as possible, if we could develop a robust, or I don't know if future-proof is the right phrasing here, but just an AI governance framework when we do consider adopting these technologies in our organizations. That's really just what I wanted to add and really touch on, is that no matter kind of where these roads take us, that the technology, we ensure that it only augments what we're trying to do and not replace us, right?
You're right. And SHRM has this AI plus HI project going on, human intelligence and artificial intelligence, which is amazing. Kay, You've raised your hand.
Yes, I just wanted to respond to the anonymous follow-up question in the
Appreciate
chat,
that.
which was asking about, I was just goofing around trying to advertise BSLS courses more by doing the logos. You know, it wasn't serious, just to give the examples. And the follow-up question is, you know, does this ability take jobs away from digital designers? And from my perspective, no. Anybody who has dealt with a professional digital designer knows that their content is head and shoulders above anything that I can generate. But when looking at the 9 examples of logos that I generated, I sort of would see it as kind of going to the eye doctor, and they ask you whether this particular lens makes you see more clearly than this particular lens. You know, having the ability to generate something to take to an instructional designer or a digital designer, you know, is better. It helps in the product. So my view is no. I don't think it is going to take jobs away. And following up on what Ricky said about keeping the human aspect in it is critical. So and Javier too. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. I see there was another question, and Javier has addressed that. Thanks, Javier. No more open questions, right on time. That's perfect. And thanks again to Kay, Javier, Knud, Robin, Ricky. Katina had to leave. There was a work emergency for her. And for all of our participants, you'll hear from us, and feel free to reach out to me or to any one of us, because my email would be there, more accessible to you. And have a nice evening. Kay, you're raising your hand? Okay. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks so much for having us.